Hi, my name is Shalon, and I'm here to help you find your next favorite book and your next favorite author. And I'm here with Mowa Badmos, who is a debut author who has mastered the hijinks and humor needed to craft a rom-com that you won't want to put down. Her novel, Love from the Cosmos, incorporates a dash of fantasy as a type A pediatrician is using an astrology-based dating app and unwittingly works with Saturn to
Yeah.
find her match. Thank you so much for joining me today.
I am so happy to be here. I love your reviews, love your content. So this is like a dream come true.
Ah! I'm so excited to chat with you about Love from the Cosmos, but I would love to start with what first sparked your love for storytelling?
I I'm sure this is like every writer's thing, and every like, oh, I've enjoyed stories from as long as I can remember. But that is also my story. Like my mom bought me books when I was growing up because she's like, you talk so much and I don't have the time. So go do your reading time, and then in like a day or two the book will be finished. I'm like, okay, can I get another one? And she's like, this was supposed to like save money, and now I'm spending more money buying books. So I think from then on, I remember as early as like 6 7, like starting to read and really just loving stories and inhaling them. Um yeah, so that's been it. It's from a young age. That's all I Moa knew who she was from a very young age, and it's someone who loves stories.
I love that. Were there any types of stories that you were especially drawn to?
I was drawn to like those like kid friendly like adventure novels where it's like, oh, they're in a boarding school, and so those
Mm.
were like all the stuff that my mom bought, or like Famous Five where they have to do mysteries and uncover stuff. So those were like what I started on. And I vividly remember like the first time I got my hands on like a romance book, and I was like, oh my
Mm.
god. I was like, I don't know if I should be reading. Then I'll hide it from my mom so she wouldn't see. But I think I was like 11, and I was like, this is fun. This is different than what I'm used to. So it's
Was it
much of
wasn't it
everything. Yeah,
adult romance or like
it was like
age appropriate romance?
it was like adult. That's why it was hidden. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, it was adult, but it was like, okay, I never read this kind of thing before. My parents would still buy me like Percy Jackson books, so you read that,
Mhm.
during the day, and then on the cover with the light, you read the romance books. Yeah,
Yes. I feel like everyone has a story about sneaking a book, depending
yeah,
on whether it was like you're supposed to be asleep instead of reading
hmm,
or what you're reading and like hiding it
yeah,
behind hiding it behind
yeah,
a book or
yeah, yeah.
reading it like secret like
Secret,
on
yeah,
the side somewhere. That is so funny.
yeah.
What as you started to grow as a person and as a
Mhm.
reader, what sorts of books or stories did you start becoming more drawn to?
I like as a teen, I was a teen in the dystopian boom.
Mm,
So I
mm,
was like really into the Hunger Games, all of those things. That was like, I think
mhm,
fantasy was the first time I was like, oh, like there's series, and they're like the storytelling is continuing through the series, because like the children's books, they are like in a series, but it's like each book is a different story. So I think fantasy novels as a teen is the first time I was like, oh, now like we are following the story, and that anticipation of like every year being like, okay, when's the next one coming out? And what's happening? So that was, I think that's the first like foray into like long form storytelling that I experienced. So those were like my first loves. I still love fantasy. So that was like teenage. Then as I got older, it was like leaning more into romance. I can't vividly remember why I got back into romance, but I just remember one day picking it up and being like, oh, I really love this. I think because I just love movies in general, so I watched a lot of rom-coms. So it's like, oh, let me try it in book form now as an adult. And I was like, oh, wait, like I like these, and then like the emotionality and the character arcs. I love romance for the character arcs. That's my favorite thing about romance. I'm a character-driven person, even in movies. Those are my favorite types of things to watch. So even though I still love fantasy, but they can be very like plot heavy because we have a lot of things to cover. Versus romance, where it's like, okay, we know you're meant to fall in love. You have to convince me that that is gonna happen. I have to believe it. You can't just tell me. So I think that's what really made me fall in love with romance as I became an adult, because I was like, this is like reality, but not, but is. So that's my like reading journey in a nutshell.
No, I love that because I think, like you said, in romance more than any other genre, I have to believe that it makes sense for these people to be in love.
Hmm.
Like
Yeah.
that it's like fated and meant to be, or they found each other at the right time or
Hmm.
something.
Hmm.
Because I'm sure you probably have experienced whether watching something or reading something, you're like, why are these two people together?
When you're
I
like,
don't know what you're trying to convince me of, but I do not believe it. That
yeah,
they're in
and those
love.
stories where you're like immediately when like either the credits roll or you close the book, you're like, yeah, I know these two are breaking up.
If it was 5 more pages, it would be
Yeah, if it's like,
over.
wait, this will be done.
Yes. So, how did your love for reading, love for stories, how did that translate into you crafting your own stories?
Oh, again, I also remember writing stories like really early on. I remember like the first story I wrote being like, oh, there's a princess in a tower,
Mhm.
something dragons. Like I remember that being the first like story I wrote. I don't remember exactly what happened, but I'm sure it's like some cliche. I'm sure it is like, but I remember that, and then the fan fiction ages, the fanfic times on Wattpad, writing in those spaces. You learn how to like craft things that are enjoyable. You're in community with other readers and
Mhm.
writers, so that was like a big part. Now I was a big One Direction fan. Read a lot of those, wrote some of those. uh, so yeah, so that's how it started. And then yeah, like almost every like going to college, it was like, okay, I did take a little break from both reading and writing at the beginning because everything was new and overwhelming. And then it was like in my last year of college that I was like, okay, let me dip my toes back into this world that I know I love so much.
Mhm.
Because I had tried to like write a full novel before when I was like a teenager, and that I didn't have the discipline
Mhm.
to go through with that.
Mhm.
But yeah, so like being like, okay, I'm about to graduate college. Let me just try. It's like, okay, just something fun. And this like love from the cosmos came to my mind, and I was like, oh, I'm just gonna try it out. And that was fun thing to do with like friends and community and some of like my friends that I made through reading communities like Book Talk, Bookstagram, and
Mhm.
us cheering each other on. So, Love from the Cosmos is actually the first book that I finished,
Oh,
like
wow.
fully finished in my life. So it's like very precious. It's very precious to me for that reason. I feel like, it's really a display of like hard work and discipline and like accomplishing a childhood dream that I at a point thought I'd never accomplish.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you decided to finish the story because I loved it. It was, I think I mentioned before, it definitely feels like one of those 2000 rom-coms with Moyo and Ni, and like how they have, like,
Yeah.
they have a connection and they're denying the connection. and it's like, okay, let's get it together.
Yeah.
Let's get it together now. But just for context, for
Mhm.
those that may not have read this story yet, we have Moyo, who is a type A person. She's a pediatrician. She's very accomplished. And she thinks she's finally found the one. She decided she wants to date,
Yeah.
she wants to find her person. And she uses Cupid's Bow, which is an astrology-based dating app that has like a very high success rate. And that relationship implodes. You'll have to read the book. You
You
have
have
to
to
read the
read the
book to
book.
see what happens, but she gets very upset because she's like, I thought I was over. I didn't have to do any more dating. I found my person. So she has some beverages and decides to write some very lengthy complaints. And Nee, who's working there, was her matchmaker. She does not know this. Also is the newly appointed Saturn, and she also does not know this. And then they get paired together to try to help her find her person, and
Yeah.
then feelings start developing there.
Yeah.
So what was the inspiration for this story? I know you mentioned reading fantasy and enjoying fantasy, so we do have some of those fantasy elements in this story, but
Mhm.
I would love to know the inspiration for the story and if the fantasy part of it came first or if that was woven in as you were like developing it.
I would say the fantasy definitely came first because it was like sometime like towards the end of like 2020. I remember like going for a walk and like 2020 being at home. We're all learning new stuff. I was like, okay, let me look into astrology. Like, this seems fun.
Mhm.
So it's like I learned quite a bit. And I remember one day just going for a walk and being like, what if, and I was talking to my friend on the phone. I was like, what if, a story about, a woman who like thinks she found somebody, but she doesn't. And then she's paired with like a god or something. And they're
Mhm.
like, that sounds so fun. You should write it.
Mhm.
And I was like, really? Really? So that it came up spontaneously because I think I was like going through a breakup. I was like, oh,
Mhm.
okay, like what if this happened and you got a matchmaker? But I think Saturn definitely came in early on in the process because it was like, okay, I didn't want it to be like Venus because I'm like, okay, that's like pretty easy. Like, okay, love, that would be like a touchstone. I'm like, Mercury's communication, that's like too easy. I was like, you need something more, like there should be some tension in there. So I was
Mm.
like, oh, I know, like Saturn is the thing, like people always complain, Saturn returned, my life went to shit, all of that, all of that. So I
Mhm.
was like, okay, yeah, like I feel like it would be fun to write a romance where it's like the more like serious, stoic character of a Saturn type falling for someone else and them having to like learn to like, bend some of their like harsh edges and that. So that's how it kind of came together. It was like, okay, I'm going through some stuff, and what if there's a story that kind of shows like, love is love is worth it. It will be there. You just kind of have to like be open to it and work towards it in your own little ways.
Mhm. Yeah, I would love to talk a little bit more about like how you centered it in Saturn because like you said, like
Mm-hmm.
that's folks who are like very disciplined. They like, they they may have like fun and things like that, but that's not like their focus. They're like a little bit more
Mm-hmm.
measured.
Yeah.
What was the thought in putting two Saturns together? Because you have like the actual Saturn
Saturn,
plus someone
yeah.
who's influenced by Saturn. So what was the thought as you were like developing Moyo and Yi?
Um, I knew I wanted her to have some Saturn elements because there was that like cosmic level of, okay, these two people are connected,
Mm-hmm.
but they're connected by the thing that makes them rigid.
Mm.
So it's like he's rigid as a person, but like Moyo in this specific aspect of love and relationships, that's where she's rigid. So I wanted there to be that unity, but also it's also all about the conflict. Like I can't make it too easy for them, which is
Right.
like when you think about real life, when you're like, oh, why is this person I'm dating not talking to me? It's like that. It's not fun when it happens to us in reality, but in a story makes for good tension. So like I wanted her to like not be just a, even though she is a very fun person who's like pretty chill, like I would grab drinks with Moya. Like I feel like
Mm-hmm.
she's someone you'd hang out with. But in this one aspect of her life, and I think we all have that, where we are a little bit more like stuck in our ways, or like, you know, a bit resistant to change because of just our nature. So I wanted that to be her nature. So like when they really like butt heads, um, it's because they are seeing things that are similar about each other, and they both know like, okay, I shouldn't necessarily do this, or like I understand why you're doing this, and having to also look inwards and be the change you want to be. So it's like they're like foils but also matches for each other. So that's why I gave them both. That's why I made them both to be like Saturn. At the end of the day, who understands what you're going through than someone also going through it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they definitely butt heads. Especially
Yeah.
Moyo, especially after what happens with her relationship that we learn about
Yeah.
at the beginning. She's
Hmm.
definitely lacking trust in
Hmm.
Cupid's bow. So
Yes.
she feels like very set on like wanting things to happen in a very specific way.
Yes.
Even though Nee's just like, I'm just here to help. She's
Yeah,
like,
like I just
you're
want
not
to do
helping
my
the way I
job.
want you to help.
Yeah.
Kind of thing, which is
Yeah.
funny. Oh, talk to me a little bit about, because we have Saturn himself, and then we also have
Yes.
someone who's influenced by Saturn, but
Yeah.
then we also have his cousins. So we do
Yes.
have Venus and Merc, who act as like a little bit of a counterbalance
Hmm.
between me as well.
Hmm.
What was your thinking in reference to like how these supporting characters were going to balance the folks that we're paying the most attention to, because we want to see how they fall in love?
I wanted I wanted the supporting characters to be their communities. That was my number one thing when crafting both me and Moyo. I was thinking, okay, how can I like who can I bring to this equation that would be a safe space in a way, like
Mhm.
will not just like be yes men. I don't think either like Moyo has like her own group of friends, and like with me and his cousins, so these are people that will listen to them but will also challenge them at times. But I
Mhm.
definitely want, like I feel like every story, the supporting characters also make a story. Like, yes, we love the main couple, but sometimes those characters that make you, you know, laugh out loud, or they just add more like flavor and flesh into the world. So I wanted to craft supporting characters that felt really lived in, so that you could really be like, oh yeah, I understand these dynamics, even though they don't have as much time on the page and we're not in their heads at all. But through the interactions, you can get the kind of people they are, and you can like immediately pick up on the dynamics that are necessary for this story. So that was very important to me. And just in like picking the people, I just wanted them to be different from Moyani.
Mhm.
Like Moya's friends, they are fun like her, but they also have their own like insecurities, some that Moya doesn't have. Like one of her friends has an insecurity around work, and one has an insecurity around school, and Moya, that's not the kind of girl
Mhm.
she is. She's very secure. So it's like the same thing that happens with our friends in reality. Like they balance us out in certain ways. And his relationship with his cousins start out a bit cold because he also is apprehensive. So it wasn't just like for him like only like love, but he's just like apprehensive to every relationship in
Mhm.
his life at the beginning of the story. But then as we go on, and there's the opening up, so I really just want for him, it's like, okay, there are these people that you could also open up to aside from this woman that you're falling for,
Mhm.
but you're not doing that yet, just to show like how resistant he was in general. And then as the story progresses, he opens up to them, and that's when he like falls more and more in love, and just kind of shows like his heart is growing. And then for Moya, it's like people that will like pull her back and will also like tell her off sometimes if needed.
Yes, yeah. I think the supporting characters were all just like so fun. Like I wanted to spend more time with them. Of
Yeah.
like, what are you all up to? when we don't see you. And
See you, yeah.
yeah, and I think they acted as a good counterbalance between the person that they're connected to, between the main character they're connected to, but
Hmm.
then also just in the story overall, as far as
Yeah.
like having different personalities
Hmm.
represented. And then because this is a rom-com, like of course we have the romance, but we also have the comedy, the comedy in this story. And
I'm so happy that you're laughing.
there were so I'm gonna try to keep this as spoiler free as possible.
Yeah.
But there were so many moments where I was laughing out loud at what was happening between the two of them,
Yeah.
separately and together. I would love to know, like, as you were like developing the story, what were you thinking of to balance, like, we need to believe these people are falling in love, so we need to feel the chemistry between them, but then the comedy elements as well.
I I would say, now this is me. This is my best Moya impression. I would be confident and say that I think I'm pretty funny as a person.
Yes.
and and so I just try to infuse that in the writing as much as possible. And then of course in like standard rom-com things, like sometimes it's just thinking of a situation like, okay, I have a goal. Like, okay, by the end of this chapter, I want them to be in XYZ place, or I want Moya to feel this kind of emotion or whatever. And then sometimes genuinely is just thinking, okay, what's the funniest way we can get there? Like, what is the basic scenario? And then how can we just make this comedic and make this like, if you see this play in your head or if you were watching it on a screen, like, would it make you laugh? So sometimes we're just thinking like, okay, how can I push this in an outrageous kind of manner? And then also just thinking like their interactions. I really wanted this story to feel real in terms like, yeah, we know it's a story, but I tried to make like the conversations like pretty realistic. And I feel like that way, especially like with Moya and her friends, is kind of like when there's a group of girls, especially Black women, like there's gonna be some laughs in there. Like that's like
Mhm.
that happens. So I was like making sure, and I'll read the dialogue out loud. I was like trying to make sure, like, okay, we are having those moments that feel natural, like, okay, a natural time for them to throw in a joke, which I think sometimes it can be like really easy to get in your head as you're writing and wanting to be like proper grammatically,
Mhm.
and things can flow smoothly, but sometimes it's just like, okay, if these were like real people, they wouldn't take all these situations so seriously. Like sometimes they'll make a joke out of it.
Yes,
So yeah.
because I'm trying to think how to put this. Okay. So once we progress through the story, we have the couch situation. And then
Yes.
they're making jokes about that.
Yeah.
Is hilarious. Of like,
Yeah.
you need to get that situated because
Yeah. We don't
there's no
want.
way, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, and I think also the comedy also helps it feel a little bit more grounded as well,
Hmm.
because you do have the fantasy elements, like you do have gods, like celestial beings, but they
Yeah.
feel like real people, not like you're reading like a heavy duty fantasy or anything like that
Yes. Yes. That was like something I tried to, because I wanted this to be accessible. Like even if you had no idea about astrology at all. Like I wanted this to be like, okay, at the beginning we're gonna like front load it a little bit to give you all the information you need to
too.
just understand the basic dynamics. But as the story progressed, I wanted to just feel like any old book. Like this is just his job. Like he's just doing his job. Like you don't need to know the intricate details of the work. Like we don't read a workplace romance and be like, I really want to know about accounting. Like we just have to know enough to give us context. So that's what I was trying to make sure, like, okay, we have enough context. And I had some beautiful like early readers and some friends. I was like, okay, I know you don't know anything about astrology, which is great because
Mhm.
you can read this and tell me if you understand what's going on. And At least those people said they did. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
believing that that's true. But I did want the humor to ground it because I think humor is so grounding and it's such a big part of our communities. And I don't know, like I find it hard to tell a story, whether it's even like a happy or sad story, without there being some degree of humor.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to like make sure the story had some of that as well.
Mm-hmm. And then if we're thinking about like the astrology elements, and you mentioned doing some research about the astrology pieces, what are some things that you wove in that were related to the astrology that you may have expanded
Oh,
on to like move it into having like a little bit of those fantasy elements?
oh, that's a great question that I don't think I've ever thought. Well, let me give me a second to think. Um,
Sure.
yeah, so look, the astrology of it, I was just using like, okay, basic birth charts. Like, okay, you go get a reading, tell you your sun, moon, or rising. Um, and I think the fantasy element, which is like, yes, there's that part initially in like an early draft. I did have them like literally like descend from the heavens,
Oh wow.
but I was like, and like there being like a realm like they go to where, but I was like, oh,
Mm.
that's like that we'd have to do like a lot of world building. So it was actually like paring down a lot of like the high fantasy stuff,
Mhm.
but just keeping some level of fantasy is the way it progresses through family. That was something that is not astrologically based at all. There's no basis for that. I just made that up. Um, and I was like, okay, I want there to be, give me also like avenues for his character growth and give him some like personal conflict as well. So I was like, I was thinking of a way, how do we bridge this gap? How can I make this happen? And I just I thought of Black Panther, like Mr. Ryan
Mm.
Coogler. If you ever
Mhm.
see this chat, thank you.
Yes, thank you so much.
Yeah, because I was like, oh, like I could see like if it's like passed through in like a ceremony, that would be like both like symbolic and like passive throne. But I also feel like that like it's symbolic in like the fictional sense, but I think that's something that happens a lot in like Black communities. Like a lot of stuff are passed down from family. Like it happens in every community, but I feel like Black people specifically, it's like you pass down things from, oh, your great grandmother gave you this and gave me
Mhm.
this and all of that. So it's that element, just like infusing it with reality, but also just adding the fantasy element that isn't astrology related, but I think could easily go into astrology, and all like the family elements thing with, oh, this is only for a specific family group, and that's why we have this like holy mantle that has been passed down for generations. So those were all the fantasy elements that I used to kind of bridge the gap between like astrology and the romance.
Mhm.
So it's not just like, oh, two people just use the dating app and things went wrong, because I did want to make astrology like a focal point. And if it was just they use a dating app, even though it is astrology based, that's like, oh, fun and kind of forgettable. But
Mhm.
adding the fantasy elements of, oh, they are actually gods and this is like a magical thing that works for them, I think just kicks it up a notch a little, but also not being too much.
Mhm. And if we're talking about things being passed down as well, they both have to grapple with like what do they want their lives to look like, and then me is like grappling with this position he did not ask for. He did not ask to be
Mm-hmm.
Saturn.
No, he
He's
did
doing
not.
it out of because it was passed down out of obligation, so like, and
Mm-hmm.
also not doing a very good job. So
No.
that doesn't help either. But then also Moya is also grappling with like being like seeing her parents in
Mm-hmm.
such a loving relationship and trying to figure out like how can she have something that is like
Yeah.
matching that too. So,
Yeah.
but yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to know what made you want to include that into the story? Because it could have just been she had a bad dating history, he's working at a job, it could have
Yeah,
been
yeah.
a little bit more surface level, but why was it important for you to include those elements too?
I think like, and also like I had a lot of conversations with my older sister, and like I said, at that time it was like graduating college and like dealing with the question from like family, like my parents, like aunts and uncles, being like, so what do you want to do?
Mm-hmm.
And at that like early 20s, being like, I don't know, I have no idea. So like talking to my older sister who is 7 years older, so I went to her like, hey, do you have any advice? You seem to have it all figured out. And she's like, I don't have it figured out. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm still figuring it out.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was like a glass, ceiling breaking. Because, when you're like younger, you see adults. And even when you're in school, you're like, oh, yeah, like there's sometimes there can be, because my sister and I have a 7 year age difference. So like she was always my role model. Like that was like me growing up. I want to be just like my big sister. And just feeling like, oh yeah, because if she figured it out, like she'll have, and then her opening up and being like, no, we don't have it figured out. Like, she was in her late 20s, like early 30s at that time. And it's like, yes, I've done some things and I'm not like, I am proud of the things I've done so far. But I don't like every day we're taking it one day at a time. And I think that's part of my decision to, aside from just including those like familial and strong communal ties, but also why they're older instead of it just being like people in their 20s around my age. I wanted them to be older because I do think as, and maybe this is my anxiety for the future showing up, but I do think as you get older, when, like my parents have big aspirations for us, which totally makes sense. Like that's what all parents want, kids to do great things. Because I can't imagine if now being like, I don't know what I'm doing and I'm kind of scared. I can't imagine like being older and still not like totally having a handle on that. Even though like a part of me is like, I don't think anyone truly knows what they're doing. Like this is all our first time living.
Right.
But
Exactly.
yeah, but it's like when the questions get posed as like a daughter, a child, whatever, and like as you're getting older and they're still asking questions, I can just imagine like, because I don't know, at 20 something, if they were like younger, it was kind of like, okay, you're just like fresh out of college, like you have time to figure it out. But adding that extra pressure of okay, like I should have figured it out. And especially for Moyo being like, I've figured out every other thing in my life. Why is this one thing, the thing I can't figure out, and that being like a point of contention for her? And then for me being like, okay, I wasn't super happy, but I was okay, which is, what all of us want. At least we want to be okay. And then being like the rug swept out from under him, where it's like, okay, now you have this family thing you have to do. And at least like my Nigerians was like, our culture is kind of like, okay, family first, like, family after something, you dive head into it, like do first, ask questions later. And that is the position he found himself in. So it's those things of like, even when you are older, sometimes like you don't have it all figured out. Plus, your family does mean a lot to you, and you want to do right by them. And especially like Nigerian culture and just in general Black culture, sometimes we can forget to do right by ourselves and take into consideration what we want and just think of what we should want because of what we've seen or what we've heard or what's expected of us. So that's why I wanted to include that, because I think growing up and finding your place in the world, in your life, is a general anxiety that I think most people can relate to. And if you can't relate to that, can you share the secrets with the rest of us?
They may not be on this plane. That's the way that
Well,
I'll put it.
yeah,
They're like, oh,
that's
I have it all figured
figured
out.
out.
I don't need
No,
anything. Yeah, I
yeah,
don't believe that.
I don't believe it either. And like helping, like writing the book actually helped me feel like more comfortable in the unknown, which grateful because I had to like put myself. I'll talk to my older sister a lot and be like, hypothetically, if this situation happened, how would you react? And also those conversations help me realize like, oh, even though there is a big age gap and you can think 20s and 30s are so far away, it's like
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily. Like there are some things, but we're all like in the same limbo space of what are we doing as adults, new adults.
Mm-hmm.
So that was it. I wanted it to be relatable aside from a romance story. I wanted people to take something away, even if like the romance is the first and foremost, but just internally on like, okay, how do I live my life as a person? I wanted some tidbits there as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it and there's definitely a lot of tidbits, whether you focus on Moyo's story
Hmm.
and her just like really like really figuring out what she wants, but also why she wants it too.
Yeah.
She has to like grapple with that a little bit, and then me about um like is your passion, the life that you want to lead, doesn't need to be influenced by family obligations? If so, how
Hmm.
much? Like, you know, that kind of thing. So,
Yeah.
which I thought was really well done.
Thank
And then
you.
something you're welcome. And then something else that brings them together is like you already mentioned, like their shared Nigerian heritage as well. So
Hmm.
you feel that throughout the book. I was very hungry in places of the book. I was like, hold on, wait. I have no access to this where I'm at currently. And it adds like a little bit more dimension to their
Hmm.
personalities, but then also to their connection to each other because they already have an understanding of
Yes.
what that means, like
Hmm.
based on family
Yeah.
responsibilities or just shared values, that kind of thing.
Hmm. Hmm.
Why was that important for you to include that they both have a Nigerian heritage?
I think exactly for the reasons you shared. I like when I'm thinking about identity in literature, I like it to have a purpose. Like it could be easy to just be like, yeah, I'm making them Nigerian because I am, and that's what I know, and I'm like I can do whatever I want. It's my story. But
Mm-hmm.
I also wanted it to be like, okay, because at the time I was living in Boston. So it's like, okay, why specifically do I want both of them to be, Nigerian people when they could have both been African American? Like they could,
Mm-hmm.
like that would not have, like it would have changed the flavor of the novel, but because of like diaspora, like we could interchange some things and make it work in different ways. But I really wanted them to be Nigerian because I wanted them to have that shared history. And Moya's like big relationship anxiety is because of her parents and what is expected of a Nigerian woman of a certain age. And also like me's like family struggles is also like very Nigerian in terms of like you should be doing certain things. So that is why like that was like the bond. Like if there was any other way that I could, and I'm sure there, I didn't think too long on it. But those were like the primary reasons. Like I'm giving them things that are directly related to their conflicts that can be explained by this shared heritage, so they have a form of understanding.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so it's like, yes, I am Nigerian, which makes it easy because I didn't have to do much research there. But it was also like, this is deeply important to the novel, and if you take away them being Nigerian, you rip away some of the context that I think makes it so rich.
Mm-hmm.
So I try to always do like even any identity I put in a book, I want there to be a reason that is not simply because it was like I just wanted to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it definitely adds a lot to their personality and like you said,
Hmm.
to like their decisions that they're making.
Hmm.
And also a little bit to their hesitation, because there is a slow burn to them
Yeah.
actually getting together. There are definitely sections where I'm like, come on now. Like, why are you
Why?
pretending you do not like
Yeah.
this person? Like, you know you do. So that influenced a lot of their choices too. Um,
Hmm.
But one thing I wanted to know is there's a few opportunities in the book for us to revisit them or the supporting characters potentially based on some
Yes. Yes.
things that transpire. Is that a possibility?
At this time, no, but I have ideas.
Okay.
I have ideas. I have something else that I'm writing currently that is not in this world. But I do have ideas, and as many people who have read have told me, it's like it seems like you're sneaking some things. Yes,
Yes.
some things were snuck in there, and I know how, if I once I get the chance, I know how, some people, many people maybe might have their own story. But yeah, I'm actually curious. Like, if you could get a story, like, whose story would you want to get first?
For oh, that's hard. I would also love a the cooking competition.
Yeah,
I would love that because that is, I'm trying to think. Is that Angie or
yeah, that's Angie.
Angie?
Yeah.
So with the person she works with. But then if I think about that one, I'm trying to figure out how we could still have the fantasy elements. Unless
Mm.
that person is like a hidden descendant or something,
There might
something
not
like that.
be there might not be like, okay, the other thing about me is like I kind of don't love doing the same thing twice,
Mhm.
especially like being a debut author. It could be so easy to just be put in a box and be like, okay, you're the
Mm.
girl that does the astrology
Right.
romances. And this is my own stubborn nature where I'm like, I don't want to be that. I don't want to be that, even though I love them. So
Mhm.
I've been toying because I've also been thinking, do I want to continue? But currently, right now, I'm leaning on maybe not.
Okay.
So it doesn't have to be someone, but it could be something different. Something's
Yeah.
different. I can share with you when we're off. I can
Oh,
send
yes,
it to
yeah.
you, but yeah, yeah,
No, that sounds good. I also am also very intrigued by Mercury. So
yeah.
if they were involved with anyone, I would read that too. So
Yeah,
I'm very
yeah,
intrigued about
yeah.
that. Like, I don't know, maybe um there's some sort of like potential love triangle with Angie since they love her restaurant as well. And then you have the chef that's been letting her use his car to go to
No,
break. I don't know, I'm just thinking out
you,
loud, but yeah,
you're
I
in
would
the
love
ballpark.
Mercury
You're
to
in
be
the
involved.
area. You're in the
Yeah.
area.
Okay. 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 Yeah. No, I would definitely love to see Mercury. I thought they were one of the most interesting supporting
Hmm.
characters as well, just
Yes.
based on their approach to things. Like you said, Mercury is about communication. And they do communicate pretty well. They seem like very put
Hmm.
together, but I would love to see them in an opportunity where they are not put together for whatever reason
Yes.
that is.
Many reasons. Many
Yeah.
reasons. But no, I do have ideas for all of them. And like
Okay.
in a just world and with plenty of time, I do hope to write something for all of
Mhm.
them. Like even if it's not a full novel, if it's just a novella, it's something like I do have, and I'll send this to you. I'll find.
Okay. That sounds great. But you did mention working on something now. I know you've been posting weekly updates about
Yes.
what you're working on now. Can you share anything about what you are toying with?
Yes, I am toying with it's this is like kind of different. So this one, like where like from the cosmos is like fantasy, it's with romance. This one is more horror mixed with
Okay.
romance,
Mm-hmm.
and they're younger, so it is that like fresh out of college age.
Mm-hmm.
And um this one is not as slow of a burn as Moya and Me were because they're grown and they really had to think
Mm-hmm.
about the consequences of their actions. But
Mhm.
these two, they're young and with youth makes bad decisions,
Yeah.
spontaneous decisions.
Mhm.
So that is kind of, we have these two academic rivals who have to work together on something. And as they work together, they realize, oh, maybe we have some stuff in common. Maybe I think you're cute. I'm like, what? That's strange. And then dealing with that, as well as some horrific things that are happening to the both of them. So
Mm.
it's still like a
Okay.
I call like a horror rom-com because it's still like romance heavy, and I think everything I write will be romance forward. And then if there is like a secondary genre, that is like the back, still features, but it's about the romance. The main stories are, how did these two people or more, how do these people come together to fall in love? So that's a
Okay.
little sneak peek.
Okay, that sounds interesting. I'm really interested in that, especially the horror element. How does that potentially push them together or pull them apart?
It
With the
does
romance
both.
element too.
It
Yeah.
does both. And like
Yeah.
this time, it's like there is like a cultural difference between the characters, where Moya and Nee are both like Nigerian and like understand these two have like some differences that they kind of have to grapple with. Um, and yeah, I read a bit about hoodoo. So
Mm.
like we're doing like a bunch of stuff. It's kind of like, I was telling one of my friends, I was like, this is kind of my love letter to Black America, which I've lived in for about 7 years,
Mm.
and just like, showing the culture and like the appreciation. The way like sometimes like we can be caught up on like internet diaspora wars, but I
Mm.
do think I have learned so much by being around African Americans, and I think we have so much that we can share with each other, that all the internet stuff is just internet stuff. So this is like my book where it's like, yeah, like there's a lot, like I love y'all real bad. So I put it in a book.
Yeah. Oh, that sounds really interesting. I can't
Yeah.
wait to hear more when it
Yeah.
is ready and read it when it is ready too. That
Yeah.
sounds really interesting.
Yeah.
What has something, since this is still part of your debut year,
Yeah.
publish your novel. What is something that has been surprising as you embarked on like actually publishing Love from the Cosmos?
Ooh. I would say like everything has been surprising, honestly. Like from even just doing edits, where you do a lot of edits, and having to think about the story in such a high level way at times, when it's like, oh, we want you to stick to this word count, or we want you to add, because sometimes the notes can be vague. It's like, we want something different with this character, we want a bit more depth, and you're like, that doesn't give me much, but I will think on it. So just learning how to like push past the basics, and kind of be like a surgeon in a way. Like that's how I think about it. Like
Mm,
whether it's an agent or beta reader or editor, being like, okay, they've identified the problem, like they know the symptoms. It's not like my job to go in and try and like diagnose and fix whatever is causing this symptom.
mhm,
Because sometimes people can just be like, this character is like not necessary, but if you have a reason why you put them in there, but you're like, okay, where is the disconnect? How can I make them relevant? Or even if they're not, like, how could I put the reason why I put them in the story somewhere else?
mhm,
So it really, I think I did not expect that much. Not like I didn't expect that much editing, but I didn't know like how much it would change me as a writer, and how deeply it would make me think about my own work.
mm,
And then leading up to like doing things like cover design and like the marketing and outreach and all of those stuff. Like, because when you're writing, at least for me, it was like, I'm writing, I want to finish this book. I've never finished the book. I want to finish the book, and
mhm.
whatever happens. happen. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
Mm-hmm.
And then the bridges were coming, and I was like, I did not think about this at all. So everything was kind of a surprise to me, and I feel like I've learned so much throughout the debut year. And like, I don't really like to think about it too much, because then I get like, my brain just gets like crazy. Where I'm like, because sometimes talking to my cousin, this is like a tangent. I was talking to my cousin like 2 days ago, and he's like, "Oh, how's your book?" And I was like, "Oh, that's it." Oh, I did not expect. Yeah, I guess it's fun. So like in everyday conversation, it kind of like falls to the back of my mind until like I actively think of it again. Because also at this stage, it's no longer my book. Like, it has my name on the cover, but it's definitely for readers. Like, I can't change anything at this point. So it's like not my problem, whatever Moya and me are up to for now, until we revisit them somewhere later on. But it's just been like, I've also learned how to let go. Like, I don't know, I think because when the story is out, I mean, like, they're out in the world, it's like a child, they turned 18, we let them go free into whatever they're meant to be. So I've learned so much, and everything has been surprising. I truly thought I'd be like anxious, like, oh my god, what's happened? What are people saying about the book? Like, after like initial, like when ARCs went out, which I was like, oh my god, like people are actually reading. That was like a shock. But now I'm just like, whatever happens, I'll keep promoting it because I do love the story. But whatever happens after the fact is whatever happens, and hope it has a long life cycle. But I've been more chill than I expected to be. That's like the biggest surprise. I've been really actually chill throughout this process, which is that's the biggest surprise.
Well, that's good, because then that gives you an opportunity to observe what is happening. And then if there's something that you want to be true for whatever you publish next, then you're like, okay, now I know. And then I can leverage that understanding to be in a different position next time, as opposed to being stressed about stress or being worried about, and then it's like, you're not able to like actually observe what's happening in the process.
No, I've learned a lot, and like next go around, we're going to do a lot of things differently. But I'm happy with the book. I'm so happy with it. So yeah, everything's a learning opportunity.
Right. And then we do also just briefly have to talk about the cover. That cover art is amazing. They look so good. When I initially saw the book, it was the cover, and I was like, this is just beautiful. How much did you influence the design of the cover?
So the cover, I love this cover so much. I would say I influenced it quite a bit because, like I said, I'm also, like, unlike Moyo, I can be really impulsive. So when I finished my first draft, I was like, okay, as a reward, I'm going to get art commissioned. Just so that I could see it and be motivated, like, okay, this is what I'm working on. So I got the art commission, and I think I'm posting about it tomorrow or Friday, if I remember to make a Canva post. But posting like the first email I sent to the artist that I use, Alex, and just being like, hey, I want to like commission, like, how does this work? I've never done a commission before. And then when it was, the book sold and it was time for the cover, and they were like, okay, send us any visuals, anything you like, the kind of covers you like. And then I also send the art being like, hey, I got this commission just to, you can get a feel of the characters. Because I did still want something illustrated and have like the people on it. So like, if you see, okay, this is a Black romance. There's no ambiguity about that. And they saw the art and they were like, can we use this? And I was like, well, I love it, but I did not pay like commercial use. So I would send over the artist email and it was like, you guys can talk. And if everything goes well, I would love it to be on the cover because I love the art. I think they look hot in it. And it worked out. When I got the email, I was so excited. I'm so happy about that. So I would say that's like my big influence on it, by just getting that art done. I can't imagine a world where this is in the cover and not them in that art style. So yeah, we don't live in the world where it's not that. And I'm happy about that.
That's amazing. Yeah, because it's I love everything about it. I love them looking at each other. I love how
Hmm.
they look. And then the colors that are in the
Yeah.
backdrop of them too. I think it worked out so well.
Hmm.
So your treat for finishing the book was the best thing you probably could have done because
Yeah. No,
who
yeah.
knows? It could have been
Who
a
knows?
cover that was like very astrology focused, but not on the couple, or it could have been
Hmm.
a variety of different
Yeah,
options.
it
But
could have been
it's so
anything.
good. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love it. Now, if you think about um, your work as a writer, we could think about it from Love from the Cosmos and anything else that you're working on, and you overheard a reader raving about your work. What three words would you want to hear them say?
I would want to hear them say funny. I would want to hear them say like a derivative, like sexy, hot, something of that realm. And I would want to hear them say introspective.
Mm.
Those would be like my three. Those are like the things when I hear people say, I'm like, okay, I've done a good job. I've done what I wanted to accomplish. And yeah, so those are my three words.
Okay. I love that. And then what excites you most about where your writing journey is headed?
I Because right now it just feels like there's like the sky is open. I
Mhm.
think getting into publishing, of course, like everything is hard, but getting in kind of just is like, shaking at the door, let me in, let me in. And, it's hard because, getting an agent and all of that. And then even if you self pub is like, you have to put a lot of like marketing money and dollars into that and do everything right. Like either way, it's a big undertaking. So just getting into it and having something that people can see, whether readers, editors, like, okay, I've done something and you can read it to know if this is like your vibe, your style, if somebody you want to interact with. So that's what I feel hopeful. And I feel like, yeah, this is just the beginning. Like in the way like Love from the Cosmos, it is a rom-com and they do get together, but I truly see it as, in my head, is like we are seeing like their meet cute, like this is just the beginning of their relationship. Like we don't get to see like the entire relationship just yet. So it's kind of like fitting where I'm just like, okay, this is the beginning of my writing journey, my writing career. So like they like open the door and like their relationship, like we end in a very open place where it's like after, months of them talking and pulling back and pushing it and and all of this, they finally get to this point where they're like, okay, we are here and we are moving forward. And that's exactly how I feel. It's like gone through the back and forth, trying to get an agent, getting rejections, trying to sell the book, getting rejections. And like we're finally here and everything else can come after that. And I'm hopeful to see where things go.
Yeah, I'm so excited to see
Mhm.
whatever will be happening next. And
Mhm.
what's the best way for us to support you?
I would say just keep talking about the book, recommend it to someone,
Mhm,
request it at your local library. If you can't afford it, books are expensive these days,
mhm.
extremely. So that's my number one thing because I used to be like huge in the book talk community, and I know like what word of mouth does for a book. That is like the best advertising. Like I'm always saying to people and myself is like, as an author, I can post about my book all I want. I can say it's great. And I know how I am as a reader. Like, not like I don't care what the author says, but I don't care. Like you're gonna say it's good. You're not gonna say my book is bad. But when it's a reader and someone you trust saying, girl, you need to read this, like the level at which you pick it up versus you just like hearing the author talk about it, like, oh, that's cool, I'll add it to my TBR. But when your friend tells you read this, you're like, okay, I am downloading it right now. So the best thing, talk about the book, share it. If there's anything you liked about it, tell people, and that's the most you can do for me. And if you want to tag me in anything, I will see it and probably cry, but I will act composed on the internet.
And writing a review if you enjoyed it also helps
Yes,
too. So
yes.
writing a review, it doesn't have to be an essay or anything like that, but if you enjoyed it, you can just say so, which
Yeah.
can be really helpful for someone else to see it and then want to pick it up too.
Yes, I forgot about reviews because I no longer I stopped
Oh
looking
no,
at them.
you don't have to look at
I
the
know, yeah,
reviews.
that's why
It's
that's
for
why
the
I
readers. Yeah.
forgot that they exist. I was like, I don't yes, review it, please, even if it's just this was so fun! Exclamation mark.
Mm-hmm.
That's more than enough.
Right, exactly. Well, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank
And
you for
then
having me.
you're welcome. And then everyone, you can purchase a copy of Love from the Cosmos wherever you buy books. It is also currently available through Kindle Unlimited. So if you have a membership, you can read it that way. And to connect with Moa on social media, you can get updates on what she's working on. You can follow her at Mo the Bad on Instagram.
Yes, or any social media really at Mo
Hmm.
the Bad. Instagram is more professional writer stuff. There'll be more writing updates there.
Hmm.
But on any social, if you search up Mo the Bad, if there is an account, it's 99.9% me.
Gotcha.
So if you just want to keep up with me, you
Yes.
can.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today.
It was a pleasure. This has like been so fun.